Run. And if you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, don't stop. It's only been an hour since everyone on Earth, as far as I could tell, heard those same words. I was already walking through the park when I heard them, and after seeing everything that happened, I won't be stopping anytime soon. It's been 2 hours now. I've kept walking. I'm tired, but stopping is not an option. Some people try driving, but the act of getting in a car requires stopping, even for the briefest moment. And as those who were already driving when they heard the rules found out, it's impossible to move indefinitely in a vehicle, especially in a crowded city. Their screams kept me moving. It's been 4 hours now, and I'm exhausted, with the only thing pushing me forward being the fear of what awaits me when I stop. And yes, I mean when. Proven by plenty of those around me. Eventually, I'll have to stop. Some have just given up, accepting their fate only to immediately regret the decision. Some just couldn't take the screams anymore. And most simply don't see the point of continuing, and with every step I'm starting to become more like the latter. It's been about 6 hours now, and for the first time I saw what happens up close. I was walking aimlessly down an alley trying to get away from the madness when I saw a young man, no more than 16 years of age, crying. Didn't even register at first to me until he made eye contact. He had stopped moving. His eyes were bloodshot, and not just the whites around his pupils, I mean the entirety of his eyes were crimson red. Black tears streamed down his expressionless face, and then he smiled. A wide, toothy smile that would have screamed joy if it wasn't followed by animalistic screams that would have given the biggest horror fanatic nightmares. I wish I could say witnessing his dying moments was the most horrific thing to happen to me today, but then it hit me. The realisation that I had stopped moving. I was at my grandmother's house, helping her move furniture around. She became my mother figure after the death of my real mum when I was a young child, and I'd been staying with her ever since my car accident. My grandmother helped nurse me back to health, so I made an effort to take some weight off her shoulders and take over most of the physical tasks. It was the least that I could do. I was in the attic when I accidentally knocked over a box. It was filled with VHS tapes, with the farthest dating back to 1990. All that was written on them was the year. There was a TV in the attic as well, because we used it more like a functioning room than a storage space. So I decided to play the oldest tape. I expected to see happy memories, home videos, scenery, anything other than this. The video starts with whoever is holding the camera filming a woman sitting alone at a small table at a coffee shop. She's reading. The camera was zoomed in on her hair glowing in the light, fixed. The tape then skips to a new setting, in what looks like downtown Chicago somewhere. I can see the back of the same woman from before, walking down the street, oblivious to the person trailing her and filming from behind. The sky is now dark grey. I can see lights from passing cars glinting off her shiny boots. The camera is rubbing up against the jacket of the cameraman. He or she is not that far from her, but it's far enough away to show that he or she is not with her, clearly stalking her. The scene lasted maybe 5 minutes of the monotonous walking until it shifted to the woman, now bound and stowed in the truck of a car. She was taped up, unable to speak. All I could hear was the sound of heavy rainfall, accompanied by her screaming and crying. Her muffled panic broke my heart in two. My spine became frozen. I couldn't open my eyes any wider. Any moment the film could shift to something so much more grotesque, so morbid, so life-changing, and I could do nothing but watch in horror. I saw a black glove-covered hand sprout from behind the camera, slam the trunk door closed, trapping her inside. The next scene skips to the woman, now beaten and bloody while tied to a chair. The location looks to be a warehouse of some kind, the only light coming from a single fluorescent bulb above the woman. illuminating pools of crimson red blood at her feet. The camera is steadily held, so much that it seems to be propped up by a stand. I can hear the poor woman moaning in pain underneath the tape covering her mouth. I can also hear something shifting around on the concrete, like someone adjusting their stance. It seemed manic. I could hear clattering of metal, like tools being packed or unpacked from a bag. My stomach now fully turned. The stalker then walks into frame, showing only his back. His head was completely covered in a balaclava. He carried a blade in his right hand. My heart completely halted. The stalker held her drooping head up, tilted her face upward, and began to slice her throat from left ear all the way to the right. She squirmed and gargled in her desperate and useless attempt to survive. I'd never seen so much blood in my life. The killer then takes off his mask and stares into the camera, flashing a toothy grin. The film then abruptly stops. I was held in place by my now shot nerves. My blood slowed into stillness, completely discolouring my body into an almost corpse-like white. My grandma was watching me. She, shakingly, tried to console me from across the room, struggling to form words through the river of streaming tears down her face. She said she didn't want me to ever be reminded of who I was before my accident. I've always tried to be a good person, and I don't just mean tipping a little extra or buying free-range meat. In every decision I make, in every part of my day, I try to think how I can help the people around me. I've had 7 rescue dogs and 3 cats. I give away money to charity on a regular basis, and I do volunteer work in local parks over the weekends. By every single metric, I am a good person. So why is it then that when I need something in return, everyone looks the other way? Why is asking for a tiny bit of payment every now and again like pulling teeth? Just last week, I looked after the old lady at the end of my road, Mrs. Hutchinson, while her granddaughter was out of town on a business conference for the weekend. You see, her mind has started to go, and it's not safe to leave her by herself. I treated her so well. I cooked for her, took her outside in her chair for a stroll in the park. I read to her to ease her sleep. I didn't even charge her, or the granddaughter. Well, I didn't charge them money at least. And 3 days ago, when that little boy came up to me with tears in his eyes, sniffling and sobbing because he didn't know where his mother was, I took him by the hand and marched right up to the counter for them to call her up. I stayed with the boy, who told me his name was Tommy, for 45 minutes until his mother came. An horrible, ungrateful woman who yanked little Tommy by the arm and nearly sprinted out of the store. I didn't even get a fucking thank you. That very same day, not even an hour after, I walked by a homeless man sitting on a street corner. I made conversation with him, gave him my jacket, which, by the way, had $40 in the pocket, and I took him to get lunch. Not some cheap fast food place, but a real sit-down restaurant. These are just 3 examples out of an entire lifetime of good deeds. So you see, I am a good person. I know I am. It's not like Mrs. Hutchinson was using her legs anyway. I'm going to get far more use out of them than she'd ever be able to. Not to mention the service I provided. The ungrateful granddaughter didn't even ask me to care for poor Mrs. Hutchinson. I did it out of the goodness of my own heart. And it is my art. I worked hard to earn it. And that little boy, he has 2 hands after all. And if you ask me, that's a small price to pay to ensure his safety in such a dangerous world. The mother should have been bowing in gratitude for the time I sacrificed for her and her little fucking son. And almost worst of all was the homeless man. After all I gave him, he had the audacity to call me a freak, a monster. I'm a saint. But even saints lose their temper. Still, even in my anger, I was fair. I only took half of his jaw. That leaves him $40 richer with a stomach full of good food, which wasn't cheap by the way, and with still the other half of his jaw to use when he eats. If he's lucky enough to get any more food, that is. I've just finished putting myself together, and I must say, these new parts fit like a glove. I use the old rotten ones as fertiliser for my garden. I grow my own vegetables, even give them away to my neighbours sometimes. But I sigh when I think of how unfair it all is. I do so much, and ask for so little in return. Maybe, someday, someone will finally be able to see how generous I am, how much I give to those around me. But, until that day, I'll go on helping people, handing out small blessings to everyone I can. Because you know what? That's what good people like me do.
So I've been dating my girlfriend for almost a year now, and last month we moved in together. Maybe that's kind of fast, I don't know. My parents sure thought it was, but honestly, everything was great in the beginning. We get along really well, and we've never had more than a brief argument. But then, she started whistling. It's dumb, I know, but she's always whistling this weird song, and it really gets on my nerves. My mum kept telling me that once you move in with someone, you discover all their weird quirks that they've been hiding from you. And it's not like I didn't expect that to be true, but for some reason, this is just an ongoing issue with us, and I don't know what to do. At first I would just hear her whistling it when she was showering. It was kinda cute, like her own little bathroom theme song. I didn't recognise the melody, but it was very distinct. I could mimic it from memory if I wanted to. In fact, sometimes it gets stuck in my head, and it drives me a little bit crazy. You know the type of tune. After a week or so, I asked her what the song was, and she just laughed. I'm wondering if maybe it's something she came up with on her own, something that she does absent-minded, especially once she started doing it more and more. Like, I'd be reading a book, and she'd be on the computer, and she'd just start whistling, and I tried to ignore it, I really did, but I seriously feel like a dick for being so grumpy about it. And I know she wasn't doing it to annoy me, but she'd just go on and on and on, and it would pull all my attention away from whatever I was doing. So I finally said something to her a few nights ago. I was going over some legal documents for work, and she just starts whistling like crazy, on, and I'm trying to just block it out, but it's seriously excessive. I know you guys are probably thinking that I was overreacting, but it felt like she was whistling right into my ear, and it just frayed my last bit of patience. As calmly and nicely as I could, I called out to her and asked her to quiet down. She didn't reply, so I asked again, and she still didn't answer. So I left the bedroom and found her in the living room, watching a movie. She wasn't whistling anymore, and for some reason, that really irked me. It felt like she was messing with me, and then she just looked over at me, like she didn't even know what my deal was. I asked her if she could stop that whistling so much, and she told me she wasn't whistling. Now, I get that maybe she doesn't realise she's doing it, but no one whistles that much and doesn't notice. It's not really like her to mess with me like that, and I don't know what she's trying to get out of this. I thought maybe she was teasing or playing a joke, but she had to see how annoyed I really was. I asked her again to just stop whistling so loudly, and she didn't answer. There was tension in the room, and it felt like our first fight since moving in together. Even though she didn't whistle for the rest of the night, I couldn't focus on my work anyway, because I was upset about the confrontation. Then, of course, the next night she was whistling again. I hear her when she comes home from work, and she just keeps going for at least an hour. I really didn't want to have another fight, so I just hung out in the bedroom and listened to her move around for a while. I felt like I was blowing things out of proportion, but honestly, how hard is it to just not whistle all the fucking time? It was no big deal when it was just now and then, but I feel like she whistles more than she even talks to me now. So, I'm sitting in the room thinking about that, and that's probably why I was so worked up when I finally came downstairs. She was cooking dinner, which is sweet, but she was also still whistling. So I said, softly, "Hey honey, maybe we should just put on some music instead, so you don't have to feel the silence of all that whistling." I tried to play it off like a joke, but I knew she'd probably see through it and get annoyed again. She didn't even turn to face me. She just huffed and kept cooking. After a minute, I told her I was sorry about the other night, but the whistling just sort of strikes my ear wrong, and if she could try not to whistle so much and so loudly, it would make my life a hell of a lot easier. I feel like I was being fair. I know it seems controlling and nitpicky, but it was bothering me a lot. We all have our things, you know. I try not to chew loudly at the table because it bothers her, so why can't she just stop whistling sometimes for me? But she totally freaked out. She turned around and told me she wasn't whistling and she didn't know what my problem was. At this point, I don't get why she was doing this. It obviously wasn't funny for either of us, and she seemed genuinely upset, so I don't know why she just kept provoking me. I asked her what her deal was, why she was so defensive about the stupid whistling, and she told me to shut up. She told me she was sick of talking about it, like I was the one being unreasonable. I never get mad at her, but I just snapped. I told her to stop whistling before I lost my mind. She called me crazy just because I was getting a little upset, and somehow that was all I could take. I grabbed one of the cast iron pans from the stove and swung it at her head as hard as I fucking could. She fell over and smashed her head on the counter, but I swung the pan again before she hit the ground. I think I maybe hit her 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but I feel horrible. There was blood everywhere, and her jaw might be broken. No, I think it is for sure. I couldn't believe I'd lost my temper like that, and I have no idea how we can move past this. I feel so ashamed for letting things get physical, regardless of how much she might have been provoking me. But here's the real kicker. She's still fucking whistling. And I asked her nicely to please stop, and now she won't even pause. For 2 days, she's just been lying on the kitchen floor with her eyes rolled back and her mouth hanging open, just marinating in congealed blood, and she's still fucking whistling. I don't know what to do. I don't want to break up, but this is just too much. I need her to shut up. Just shut up. Just fucking shut up.
My house rules. Number 1. Always take off your shoes when you come in. They don't like dirt. Number 2. Always say hello. Number 3. When you enter the house, go straight to your room. Number 4. Lock your door. Number 5. If you leave your room, go straight to where you need to go and do not stop walking. Number 6. Don't forget to walk with your head up. Number 7. Never block your vision. Number 8. If you hear laughing, ignore it. Trust me, it isn't there. Number 9. If you turn on a light, do not turn it back off. They will take care of it. Number 10. Do not turn off the music. One guest in particular doesn't like the quiet. Number 11. Do not look into empty rooms. Number 12. When you get back to your room, lock the door again immediately. Number 13. Get your feet off of the floor as fast as possible. Number 14. If you hear someone calling your name, do not move. Number 15. If the sun is down, never look out of your bedroom window. Number 16. Don't check the closets, under the bed or the showers. They like privacy. Number 17. At 3 AM, things will start to happen. Do not answer your door. You will hear tapping on your window. When you do close your eyes, do not open your eyes. Number 18. Make sure you go to sleep by 12 minutes past 3 AM. This is non-negotiable. And finally, number 19. Don't forget, you live alone. One day, I was bored and decided to search my own name on Google. I have quite a rare name, so I didn't expect to find many results. Now, imagine how surprised I was when I came across a website that had my full name in the domain, www.myname.com. When I clicked the link, it brought me to a message board. I looked at the profile of the website owner and found out the person was the same age as me and had the same hobbies and interests. There weren't any posts on the message board, but I was intrigued, so I saved it in my favourites. Fast forward about a month when I went back to the website. This time, it had more content. There were some diary entries, mostly random things like, the weather was nice today, or I'm so bored in work, things of that nature. However, as time went on, I began to notice more and more coincidences. The person lived in the same city as I did. It struck me as rather strange that two people with the exact same rare name would be living at the same city at the same time. At one point, I noticed that the contents of the diary were quite similar to my own life. One day, I went to a baseball game, and when I checked the website that evening, I found that the owner of the site had gone to the same ball game. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, tens of thousands of people in the city supported the same baseball team. It began to seem much more like a simple coincidence. Whenever I checked the website, I would notice little biographical details that seemed too close for comfort. For example, the owner mentioned their pet dog, and the dog's name was the same as the dog I had when I was a child. The website owner posted a picture of their car. It was the same model of car I'd been driving when I was in college. They talked about eating at a certain restaurant. It was the same restaurant I'd gone to all the time when I was working at my previous job. One day, when I looked at the message board, people had written messages to the owner saying happy birthday. The funny thing is, that day, it was my birthday too. I decided to write on the message board for the first time, just out of curiosity. I was going to wish the owner a happy birthday and tell him we had the same name. However, when I tried to write something, I realised that there was nowhere to type your message. It wasn't a message board after all, just a static page. That's odd, I thought to myself. In other words, whoever owned the website had gone through a lot of trouble to make it seem like it was an interactive site, as if there were other people posting on it, when in actual fact, all the content must have been created by the same guy, the owner. Why on earth would anyone do that? I decided to send an email to him. It read, "Hi there, believe it or not, we both share the same name. Nice to meet you." The next day, when I tried to look at the website, I discovered that it was gone. It seemed like it had been deleted. Then, I opened my mailbox. There was one reply. When I looked at it, a chill ran down my spine. It just read,
"I found you."